books still available. So let me know if you're in the building. I can hand one to you when we're done here. If you are remote, I can set one aside if you want to come by and pick it up. That would be great. So I was surprised. I ordered 10, they went away. I ordered 5 more, they went away. So there has been interest in this, and I know that some people are reading library copies or other things. So that's really wonderful. I thought we should go ahead and sort of get on the same page, metaphorically. And so really quickly, we'll start with the people that are in the room, and then we'll shift to the folks who are joining us remotely. But just real quickly, what's your name and one thing for which you're thankful? And then if you've already read the book or started doing the reading, was there anything that surprised you? So real quickly, we don't have a lot of time, but real quickly, I'm going to start with Mark Kelly because he's in the front row.
Okay, Mark Kelly, and I'm grateful for importance. And
okay.
Sula Boy, I'm grateful for my family.
Have you started reading?
I read it. I don't know about
okay. Kenny Boy, grateful for that.
Kid Travis, and I'm very grateful for the help of children, grandchildren, and let's see. Yeah. Well, I hope to get greater insight into my prayer practice.
Erin Thompson, and I have not started reading your book yet, and I'm grateful for snow.
Hey, Gordon. I'm grateful to be here and the weather. It's really nice to have. And I really haven't started. I've got the just introduction.
Deb Roden, I'm thankful to be back here at Good Shepherd. I really missed it. And I'm loving this book. And I have just found a couple things that have resonated with me throughout, a couple of themes, such as the way God can talk to you and you might be praying when you don't maybe really know it. So that's what I've come up with so far.
Robin here, I'm grateful for that one. It was canceled for the ice. And I have not started reading. Nadine Pope, I have started reading. Today I'm really thankful for a car that navigates well in the ice and snow. And I'm just like Kip, I think I have just more insight into praying, validating my prayer life.
I'm Jane Oxenbury. I'm grateful for and horrified by my daughter's 39th birthday coming up on Thursday. I'm not sure how that happened. I have started reading. I like the way he thinks outside the box about prayer.
Right, the room is done. Those of you who are on coming in remotely, just sort of popcorn it out. And we'll, when I hear a huge silence, we'll get going in the rest of this.
Go, Mike.
Mike?
Me first?
Yeah.
I am Mike. I'm thankful for the life that I have and where I live compared to what's happening throughout the world. And what I want to get out of the series is instead of just praying because you're supposed to, but praying because it's what you're needed.
This is Becky.
Becky,
great. Hi, this is Becky Bealmore. I'm grateful. I'm thankful that my son just got engaged, so that's exciting news in our family. Thank you. What I hope to get out of the series is maybe some new ways to pray that I haven't been exposed to. I haven't been able to finish all the reading yet, but I really like his writing style. And I I think that's all I have to share right now. And I'll probably be cutting out early because I got to drive from Castle Pines to get to church by 10:30. So excuse me if I leave a little early. Thanks.
I can't quite hear you. Maybe you said Linda. I'm thankful for longtime friends of more than 50 years and new friends I'm making at Village Cooperative. And what I'd like to get out of the book, although I've not begun to read, is a deeper, more meaningful way to pray.
Anyone else there? I see.
This is Eleanor Hubbard, and I'm thankful for family, thankful for the beauty of nature. Thank you for the skill of doctors and close emergency facilities.
Anyone else online?
Okay. And see, this is Jean Michael, and I am thankful for family and for God's love. And I hope to get out of this series more on how to pray, understanding of prayer. And so far it is meeting all those goals more and more.
Wonderful. Anyone else?
Hey, it's Andy Folker. Thankful for my health and just looking forward to new ways to re-engage in prayer. Thank you.
Hi, this is Sue McKenzie. Is it coming through?
Yes.
Yes, Sue. Okay. I'm thankful for family, my health, and I'm very thankful for Good Shepherd and all my friends and the fellowship at Good Shepherd. And as far as prayer, I pray every day, but I don't feel real comfortable praying in a group of people or out loud. So I'm hoping this will help me gain confidence in prayer.
Okay, well, let's get going then. Let's get into this. Before I move much further, I want to just say a word about the readings. When I looked at the book and I looked at the study guide, I thought we got to read this whole thing. I don't know how you would pick and choose sections, and so it's kind of ambitious. There's roughly 60 pages per week, sometimes more, sometimes less. If you want the printout of the sort of the overview of I've got those here. They're available online, but if you just want to pick one up. And I made these primarily for folks who are either reading hard copy or are listening to Audible or reading it on Kindle, because the questions are in the back of the paperback copy. But they are not, because this is a more recent edition. This was just actually released early in February. It's the same thing, it just has the discussion guide in the back. So the rest of the text is the same, but it doesn't have a question. So I printed these out and made them available online for folks who might not have the paperback copy. So if you don't read it all, that's fine. If you do, that's great. But we'll be able to sort of muddle through. So this morning, there were 5 chapters. So there was a lot, and he was setting up what he was planning on doing through the rest of the book. And for the rest of each additional week, it's basically only 2 chapters per week rather than 5. So we would have more time to spend talking about each chapter and what comes up in each chapter, although the chapters are longer. So today is going to sort of be a little bit of a whirlwind to kind of get through them, but it's a lot of stuff that people have already hinted at, mentioned in terms of wondering whether or not they're comfortable praying, or doing it right, all of those kinds of things. And so for folks who haven't had a chance to read any of it, I'm going to sort of walk through a bit of what he says in the book. Unfortunately, in the early chapters, it's a lot of numbers. He got 9 reasons for this and 10 reasons for this and 3 reasons for this. You know, so it makes it very easy to sort of summarize without having to do a heck of a lot. But he starts out arguing that everybody can pray. Everyone can pray. And he tells, throughout these early chapters, he tells his own story. And he backs up and he says, you know, I didn't think I was very good at it. And I don't know, he tells in one of the chapters, I forget which one, he asks students or a group to close their eyes or put their head down on the desk, raise their hand. How many people pray? And the hands go up. How many people think they pray well? And a lot of hands come down. How many people think they need to, you know, so there's this sort of fluctuation of hands going up with people's confidence in their ability to pray. And so he gives these 10 reasons why believers don't pray. They weren't taught, which could be right, you know, for children. What does it mean? Some people don't think they can because it's only holy people who can pray. Like Mother Teresa, who in her book said she had problems praying. They think they're praying wrong. They're not using the right words. They don't have the right attitude. They're turned off by religion. So why pray if religion isn't any good? I've been beaten up by religion, so why should I pray? Like those two things are intertwined. That been encouraged. Yeah, this is a good start. Keep going. They've had a bad experience. And when he talks about there a little bit is, well, oh God, won't you give me a Mercedes-Benz? And you didn't get the Mercedes-Benz, so why pray? You know, the bad experience was they didn't get what they were asking for, or they didn't come away feeling like they thought they should feel. They don't see the point. If God already knows everything, why am I talking to God? What's the point? They're too busy. They think that prayer is one of those things you have to reserve a specific time and perhaps a specific place for. And if noon comes and that's your prayer time, but you have a business lunch and you just not pray. Or if you have to be in your basement in front of your little home altar and you're on a business trip or traveling. So, too busy. Or they're just lazy. Or, of course, if you pray, you might be changed and you don't want to change, so better not pray. Put yourself in the position of prayer. So those are the kind of 10 reasons. Of course, he gives his spin on those. And then here are the other 6. Sorry about that. So, do you believe that everybody can pray? Is that, I would assume that since you're in this room, you would at least hope so. But I wonder, is that something, he asks this question. And why or why not? I see heads nodding in the room, but why do you think this is true?
Well, why wouldn't it be true? I mean, everybody can pray. Everybody can have a conversation with a friend and God. So I do believe everybody can pray.
Well, I like what you just said. It's a conversation.
Right. That will come up again. Prayer is conversation.
I think even people who don't believe in prayer probably do. They just don't recognize it in themselves because it's not formal, or it's maybe a fleeting thought. And that doesn't register as prayer.
Yeah, sort of. What is it? Yeah, we'll get to that. I think maybe one of the things that he didn't put in these 10 reasons was they think prayer is something that it may not be, or that it may not be something that it is. So we'll get to that.
But if you're not kneeling and in front of God.
Right. Yeah, so that's kind of doing it wrong. Which, if you've talked to other folks about prayer, maybe you haven't. What do you most frequently observe, or if anything? And if you have not saw yourself as a prayer, what are the excuses of these 10 reasons? say excuses, but he's gentler. What are the reasons that you might use?
Fear of change.
Fear of change. There's an honest name.
I agree. Same for me.
No fear of change.
That it might motivate me to do something that I really don't want to do, or it might. There's a term in the Baptist church, convince, isn't it? That God would say, you need to do this, and I don't want to do that.
It's funny, he talks about that in the book, and he said that rarely happens, that you're going to be changed into a sage or something.
Right.
He talks about that, because that's a lot of people's fears, which I have the same fear. I think it's a habit. To me, it needs to be a habit, like your exercise or something else that you do, and you haven't developed. I'm very kind of a schedule kind of person, so if I don't have something on my schedule, I might forget to do it, of which exercise is one. I might think about it during the day, thinking, oh, I didn't exercise. So to me, prayer, I think for me, I need to make it a habit to continue to do it.
Thank you. Without jumping too far ahead, and maybe some of you read this in one of the later chapters, but he talks about the desire to pray as being a prayer in and of itself.
Sure.
And so, oh, I forgot, or something like that, is in and of itself a prayer that says, I wish to be in relationship with you, but things got out of hand. So, yeah. And I think the other thing, Deb, to your point, is, and he's not going to talk about this in the book, that's probably some other book that he's written, because he's written a lot. But what does being a Christian mean? You know, does it mean that we have to become holy people in the same way that we might think about, you know, a saint or something like that? So if we're afraid that we're going to have to give up everything that we are as a human being to become something else, then of course we're not going to change from that, because, you know, maybe holy people don't play backgammon or something. And I love backgammon. I don't, you know, so I wonder how much of that is in there. We think we've got to become something we aren't. God really calls us to be.
The first thing that I thought of when you likened prayer to exercise was it created a sense of discomfort in me, and I am a comfort-seeking creature, and so the idea of prayer becoming an uncomfortable obligation is something that I don't want to associate with prayer.
I think if God puts our deepest desires into us, and I believe that to be true, then why would we be afraid he would call us to something that isn't a deep desire? That's not the way the God I know operates. And so, you know, that's a mindset that maybe our Puritan forefathers gave it to us. I don't know, we need to suffer in the name of God, but that's not the way I know God operates.
I was going to say, for me, I remember growing up Catholic, it was a lot of guilt, right? And I remember maybe about 4 or 5 years ago, I started changing the way I was praying to actually be positive, kind of like how the Episcopal Church is in my mind, right? Which is, but prayer can just be about being thankful. And maybe when I'm being thankful, I might say, well, I didn't do as well on this, but this week I'm going to try to be better at this, like not with my temper, with my kids, or with my dog, or whatever it is that I try to start out positive first. And that to me has allowed me to actually, you know, feel more comfortable with praying, because I'm not a holy person. You know what I mean? Like that was one of the ones that resonates with me, because, you know, when I was growing up, you did your prayers at bedtime and at dinner, and those daily time, and I find like when I'm alone in my car, or just, you know, something resonates.
And then I'm gonna go to some folks, see if there's somebody online.
When we were talking about why people don't pray, and I remember that there were a young couple, and they had joined North Presbyterian Church, and I was still connected to that church. And talked with him, and the gal said something about prayer, and I said, well, prayer is not let's make a deal. We have to understand that. It is not, God, if you do this for me, I'll do that for you, or vice versa. And that really struck this young woman. I don't remember, you know, if she came from a church or it was brand new or whatever. But she said, really? And I said, yeah, it is just talking. When my brother died, which was 1 month after my husband died, and I had to drive to Lakewood to deal with his house, etc. And every day, Holy Spirit, please just get me in the car and get me safely there. I mean, every single day. And that's, I mean, it's just.
Good. Is there anyone that's joining remotely? Just you're down here because this is where I can see you rather than up there where you are. Who wants to jump in here? Otherwise, we'll move to the second chapter.
Yeah, Father, we tend to intellectualize prayer, and we get overwhelmed with everything that's thrown at us. And a very simple fact is, you know, about 20% just don't believe in a spiritual life at all, and that number is growing. So we're in a situation where we call upon prayer and then feel guilty about it because we don't use it often enough. I think oftentimes we should reflect that prayer can be a daily meditation or talking within ourselves spiritually. And we don't correlate the two. We tend to use prayer for something we want or need instead of it being a conversation with God. My grandmother was raised Benedictine and prayed every morning and every evening. And that was her life throughout her whole life of 63 years.
Thank you. Anyone else coming in from ether? Well, a lot of the things that you brought up, he brings up in subsequent chapters. So he starts telling stories about himself, and he talks his early experiences with prayer. And he says, "We're walking to school, and he said, God, please give me a dog." As he's walking to school, and he points out that that's as silly as it sounds to us. It's, you know, that's petitionary prayer. That is a prayer. It's asking for something for ourselves. And I know he'll get into this more, but he gives that as an example. And then he turns to the question of the issue of conversation. Prayer is conversation. And then he tells the story about riding his bike through a meadow and having to stop really quickly because something just didn't happen quite right. And we thought maybe the books in his basket got unbalanced. He had to stop, and all of a sudden he realized he was in the middle of this meadow, and it was beautiful. And he just had to be there, you know? And so these are, in his telling, experiences that a child has, that a child can have, that doesn't get to that intellectualizing stage that we've already sort of mentioned. So, you know, he says children often relate to God in any way they please. This allows them to be more open with God than adults are. Can you remember a time when you felt the freedom to relate to God in this way as a child? See some heads go up and down, some other heads going back and forth. That's okay.
You mean when we were a child?
Yes.
Or as we
were? When you were a child, I think he's asking you, when you were a child, do you remember anything that was related this way? Remember?
I was 4, and it was before my mother died of cancer. So it was probably spring, early summer, and I was praying at her knees. She was sitting in a chair. And I prayed that God would take care of our soldiers in Korea. And I looked up at her when I was done, and I said, do we still fight like David and Goliath? And this smile came across her face, and she said, no, we don't fight that way. Now, I didn't need to know anything else. I just looked up, we still like David and Goliath.
Other responses, either positive or negative, or not positive or negative. Yes, you had this experience when you did not have this experience. Elaine?
So when I was a kid, we spent every summer, part of every summer at the lake, and out on the boat, fishing, talking to the loons. I met God. Now I had no idea that's what I did, until probably 35 years later when I was sitting under a tree at a retreat and went, oh my gosh, that's where I met God. But no question, that's where I met God, but I didn't have the words at that time to label it that. My Sunday school teacher put a bit of Paul.
Anyone out who's joining us via Zoom? While we're waiting, go ahead, Karen.
You know, I wasn't raised in a household of faith, so I mean, we did the perfunctory few years at the Methodist Church in my hometown. So I was more of a young adult when I became aware of that longing for faith in me. But I remember being about 22, and my husband was a Boy Scout leader, and we went caving in Kentucky, a very big thing. Caving. And when we arrived, my husband still tells this story. I got out of the bus, and I had never been in a situation where I could see the stars the way that I could when we were in Kentucky. All the car lights were off, bus lights were off, laid down on the gravel. It was about 2 degrees, and I just stared up at the sky, and I had this sense that of being so small, but also enveloped in just a universal love and acceptance that I've never experienced before. He still thinks that's the funniest thing he ever saw me do. Like, lay down on the ground and stare at the sky, because it was so accurate. But I just had this sense of being so small, but also so relevant.
Okay. Anyone online?
One night, I don't know, I must have been about 8. It was a bright moonlit night, and I took a book out to see if I could see enough to read by the moonlight. And the thought occurred to me, what if there isn't a God? I was terrified. I thought I was going to be struck dead, that I even thought such a thing.
Wow. So in some respects, answered the second question of, what experiences any of those 3 forms of prayer, petition, conversation, or moments of this, you all sort of touched on those, giving some examples of those. And I think probably that's the sort of pre-intellectualizing stage for a lot of us, is that we can feel awe because it's just so majestic, or we are stuck in the I want, giddy phase of life. So that does, we want to have conversation. So we probably were praying, at least in Martin's way of discussing prayer, or, but we didn't think about it. We may not have thought about it. Although I really like your point about what if there isn't a God? That's pretty heavy thought for a child. Well, then he goes into these reasons to pray. Why don't you pray? Well, you think you're going to get it wrong. But then, sometimes we have these experiences where we do. And he says, here are these 9 reasons, 9 common reasons to pray. God wants to be in a relationship with us. And we hear this often enough. I've said it a number of times, that at the heart of God's very being is relationship. If you are a Trinitarian, the Trinity is a relationship within the Godhead, Father, Son, and the Spirit. And that, as I preached a long time ago, the great thing from James Weldon Johnson, God was lonely and said, I think I'll make me a man. So this sense that God wanted to be in a relationship. So God wants to be in a relationship, but we want to be in a relationship too. And to Linda's point, the fear that there wasn't somebody to be in, or something to be in a relationship was pretty scary. Well, we have to. He just says we have to pray. We just can't get around it. Although I think there are probably some people who would say, oh, no. But he points out in the book at some point, he says, if you're reading this book, you want to pray. Otherwise, you wouldn't be reading this book. So you people who think we have to, or don't think we have to, if they're reading the book. We're in need. There's nothing to argue against the fact that we are people who need things, need support, need food, need love, need connection, whatever. Prayer helps us. Just and this relates actually to the next one too, the prayer is a way to unburden ourselves. It gives us an option to, or an opportunity to be with that which is beyond. It may be just simple unburdening. I know that he doesn't talk about this, but just writing stuff down in a journal. If the idea that there's a God sort of relating to that is just unburdening, being in a way that is in itself. It helps us to praise. When you were laying there on your back looking up at the stars, I don't know whether praise was part of your thinking, but maybe it was or wasn't conscious.
I don't know that I recognized it as a 22-year-old. It took me years to come back to church, but it was probably within me unrecognized.
And then I forget who it was saying, somebody said they were uncomfortable praying around others. But prayer puts us in solidarity with others. And he says in the book that this is a book about individual prayer, private prayer. See you, Kim. That it's not a book about communal prayer, but it does help us do that. But I think one of the things that he doesn't say is that by you'll get to intercessory prayer, praying for others. By praying for others, we become in solidarity with them, or we find ourselves in solidarity with those situations where people for whom we pray. And then, despite those of us who don't want to be changed, some of us do pray to be transformed. Please God change me. I don't like the way that I am. I don't like who I am. So, which of those seem to be most compelling to you, or which it doesn't have to be any one; it could be multiples. But, which of those seems to be the?
Well, I thought it was interesting. I always think of I want a relationship with God, but I like that he had up there that God wants a relationship with me, and I think I often forget that.
Yeah.
There's a couple in what Robin said, but in addition, I look at the transformation part as it doesn't have to be a huge transformation. I mean, there's things I want to transform about my attitude and the way I treat people is where that's where I want to be transformed. And I think transformation can be the small things. It doesn't have to be a big thing. So that's very compelling to me.
Others online or?
I think for me, it's more a longing for connection, and I think that's why that event comes so easily to mind for me, because it was a time when I really did feel like I was a part of something much bigger than myself. And I think I'm continually seeking that in my life, that sense of belonging to something bigger. When I receive communion every week, it never fails to dawn on me the connection that I have, through thousands of years of people to say very similar or not the same. So for me, it's not really about transformation. That's more something that happens as a result of that connection to others.
Anyone zooming in?
When I was in college, I met this Jewish girl and I made fun of her faith when she said her brothers were working with her father. And I mocked her faith and said, well, that's just so Jewish. you guys always stick together. And she chided me for really being racist. And I spiritually had to, within myself, say, you know, I'm raised to understand and love completely. And within 5 minutes, I apologized profusely because she was right. So spiritually, the inner prayer reminded me, if you're going to be a Christian, you better continue to grow, and allowed me to quickly adjust a wrong bias.
One more. I remember in my 20s, I always got along better with guys and girls. And part of that was my own personality. I was very competitive, but I was more, sports and outwardly competitive. It's kind of a turn off to a lot of female relationships at that time in my life. And I remember in my 20s saying, I want to have more female relationships. I'm missing on that. And I remember saying, okay, today, I'm going to make change. And I remember having multiple conversations with God saying, I failed today, but I need to be better, next time. And catching myself, what he just said, catching myself and reframing. But it was a long process. It took me a long time for that transformation to use my competitive nature in a different manner that was not.
I am often praying for transformation because I'm now the head of the household. And my widowhood has taught me an awful lot. I can be curt with people, and so I have to pray about not being downright mean because I don't want to be taken advantage of. And I try to ask the right questions, so I'm making the right financial decisions. And we shared it, Rolly and I shared everything. So it wasn't a matter of it being a big surprise, but it is different to be the head of the family. And there are no cousins living. My brother's gone. I'm the oldest on both sides of the family. And I thought, shoot.
Well, you bring up a point that he doesn't necessarily make, but we find ourselves at different stages of our life praying in different ways.
Yes.
That we, life circumstances, and so thank you. Again, mindful of time, just sort of move on. He and we kind of touched on this. He's 9 types of prayer that we may be unaware of, praying without knowing. And I really like this because there are times when it's not 5 in the morning my time. So is there other stuff? Spontaneous request for help, like I'm getting out of my car, please don't let me fall on the ice. The experience of something inspiring. Just, and I mentioned this before, just about every time I drive over that hump to drop down into Estes Park, and the Rockies are there in front of you in the wave.
Drive Creek, just turn off the highway onto Drive Creek, and you've got that long view of the Front Range. It's just, if I ever take that for granted,
awareness and compassion. We have all sorts of opportunities for that when we're driving down the road. I'm just struck seeing homeless encampments in places that I didn't expect to see them. A tent under an overpass or something like that. A sense of wonder or curiosity that laying on your back, and, looking up and amazing. Wondering if our behavior meets God's approval. This gets to the guilt side, but that is its own, it's not the only one, but it is its own way of prayer. Oops, is a prayer, isn't it? Curiosity about the meaning of life and why am I here? Is this all there is? That's a prayer. Because it's addressed to something bigger than this. Gratitude, where we started this morning. What are we thankful for? A cat, food, housing, beauty of snow, all of that. attempts to center or connect, just that thing that now we call yoga. Just that desire to pull in, or just that simple desire, and that's a prayer. And I hadn't thought about all of those in that way of saying these in and of themselves are prayer, without me sitting at my desk and finding more. I'm very structured in that way. And being out of that, I have to through some of these things. So I put this other book by Anne Lamott, Help, Thanks, Wow, as the 3 fundamental prayers that we have. And if you've never read any of Anne Lamott, I highly recommend it. She's wonderful. But this book in itself sort of summarizes these 3 ways of praying that Martin talks about. That, you know, there's a prayer I need, thank you, and my goodness, this is great. You know, so another option there. But do you have, he raises the question, do you have frustrations in prayer? What do you wish you might look at? What hopes do you have? I've heard some people, I hope I learned to pray together. What is that? What is that?
But this kind of gets back to the first question, why people don't pray? And one of the things that occurred to me, of course, was, well, we're atheists, they're awesome. And I remember having a conversation with somebody about prayer, somebody who knew God. And this was about 10 years ago when I attended a retreat with Father Key, and he was teaching contemplative prayer. I said, well, this is like meditation. So with the great mindfulness movement that's going on right now, that's a form of prayer for Christians and non-Christians, or atheists, or agnostics. And my frustration, and for me, that's the most important thing. It's a central frustration. But my frustration after all these years of practicing that is still distracted mind, trying to come back, you know, to allow those thoughts that come into my mind and just let them go, not punish myself for being distracted.
I wish I could remember who said this, but it was some holy woman who should be able to pray, you know, while running away from a bear, you know, who said her in prayer, you know, not much of a holy woman. But she said when she runs into monkey mind in her center's prayer, if that happens 1,000 times in a 20-minute sit, that's 1,000 opportunities to turn her mind back to God. And what better prayer could be than that? And that always made me feel better. Was that not? I don't know what it was, but she said something.
What was that?
I said Nadia Bowles-Weber commented something like that. Last year.
A Mother Teresa kind of person.
I love the use of that term monkey mind, because that's both a secular term and I mean, that's a secular term that we read about all the time, but it definitely affects your prayer life, that desire for mental space and silence so that you can talk. And I don't know whether it affects women more than men, but you know, women's minds are just so constantly distracted by other people's needs, and it's incredibly hard to find the space to commune with something greater than yourself, because you know it's constantly this person needs this, or I should be doing, you know, I should be cleaning the litter box or vacuuming the floor, or I should be, you know, helping my daughter pack because she's moving out, and so I get lost in that, and I lose that space. And maybe it's that I'm looking for prayer to be something different than it needs to be.
Well, that gets to the second question up here. It says, what are some ways you might already be praying without knowing it? What might this realization teach you about the nature of prayer? If you say you're doing something, is that prayer?
I mean, maybe it doesn't need to be silent. Maybe I don't need that mental space. Maybe it can just be that fleeting thought of gratitude or fear for someone else's safety, that those are, which are big in my mind right now for so many reasons. Maybe that's prayer too, and I just need to kind of fall into that.
Although, like Father Gary said, and Irma, prayer changes as your life changes. So maybe the silent prayer isn't what is the best for you right now. That might
not my life.
It may never be, right? I mean, I've tried that. We did that years ago with Father Craig. We did a centering prayer thing class, and oh my gosh, it was so hard for me. And I think I failed miserably, but that's just not my.
But maybe it's not failure. I mean, maybe we're framing it as failure, but it's just a different kind of success.
Yeah, maybe it could be both.
Right.
Right. Maybe you have, if there are those fleeting thoughts that continue to ramp up and around, maybe it's an opportunity for you to say, okay, well, that tells me where I'm at.
Right.
And I also want to get the picture of it really in a clear space.
So it's a reframing.
Right. Okay. Good. I'm gonna move along. Sorry, we need to sort of keep. I want to get. I realize we're rushing, but this is 5 chapters, and we won't always be 5 chapters. We do a deeper dive, but he's really setting the groundwork for what he's doing with the rest of this. So he gets into this question that I think is the heart of what we've been talking about: is what is prayer? We talked about why we do it, why we don't do it, what we think it is, and then he really sort of delves into a number of sort of definitions of prayer, and he ends up with his own. And he starts this, and some of these may resonate more with you than others. And there's one slide I'm going to skip unless we have time to he starts out with this quote from St. John Damascene, or St. John Damascus: prayer is the raising of one's mind and heart to God, or the requesting of good things of God. Taking ourselves up to the level of God and asking God to grant things for us. That's one option. Good. That was a video. So that's why I went past it. We can come back to it because it will make you smile if you want to. He says it's a surge of the heart. And this is a less conscious than that. You're raising yourself to the level of God. It's a surge of the heart. Saint Teresa of Lisieux. It's a simple look turn toward heaven, a cry of recognition and of love, embracing both trial and joy. This is hard. This is fabulous. Both of those. It's a sharing between friends. Mental prayer is nothing else than a close sharing between friends. It means taking time frequently to be alone with him who we know loves us. Just being. And that conversation piece goes back to that again. It's a long, loving look at the real, or contemporary writer Walter Burghardt. What's out there? How do I engage that which is real? Then sort of the spatial up, down kind of thing. It's really looking at it. In some respects, that's very much kind of a mindfulness sort of thing, paying attention to the present moment. Is that what's real now? Where is God in the midst of this now? Personal relationship, really very conscious relationship with God. But then he ends with this: it's a conscious conversation with God. This is his definition. So he moves from St. Teresa of Lisieux to his own definition, moving between this sort of I thou, way up here, that kind of thing. So this is, I'm consciously in conversation with God. My spiritual director, he talks about that in these early chapters. My spiritual director is a Jesuit, it turns out. And I saw him a couple of weeks ago. I said, do you know Jane Farr? You should know Jane Farr. Another one said, I've heard of it. Says, I don't know if I've even met him. I thought, golly, the Jesuits should be smaller group than that. You should know this guy. And he said, no. But he at one point, he prompted me to think about having a conversation with God in the same way that I would have a conversation with a friend. You go out to coffee with a friend, you spend a few minutes catching up, you do this, you do this, and then you say, and you know, so this sort of conscious conversation, I thought of that immediately when I read this piece that he wrote, this conversation with Father Ed, like the spiritual. So what is prayer? Before reading those, or before reading the chapter C, we run quickly through those slides. How would you have answered the question? Would you answer it differently now? Would you see other things? Or for you, what, before today, or before reading any of these, what would you say prayer was? Which might get at a reason for why you weren't sure you were doing it.
I was taught conversation with God.
Conversation with God.
The earliest days that I can ever remember.
Okay.
But I get intimidated if I'm supposed to do something very formal. Okay. It's not me.
Anyone else?
Kind of getting back to the question of how we think Roman Catholic, it was always petition from St. Mary's. And that was transaction, which means that made me feel sure if I was doing enough in order to get that from God. And now, years later, it's more central.
So petitionary and transactional. I love the fact that in the book he said, if I wanted something really big, it meant more Hail Marys. This is a 17 Hail Mary desire. This was only one. That very transaction. There's a theory of sacrifice, a scholarly theory of sacrifice called do des, which means I do so that you will do. Very transactional. You know, I sacrifice this so that you won't cause a plague or something like that. Yeah. So yeah, there is that transaction side to it. And I think we hear that very early on. Anyone else?
I just wanted to add one thing.
Quickly.
And I know when we were with Greg and we were doing more centralized prayer, I shared this. I'm sorry we would have it. But I have been extremely mad at God. And one day when I was driving from Greeley to Heritage High School, 67.5 miles from my garage to my parking place, I yelled at God almost all the way down about, is my Job period over? I want my Job period over. And it was at that time of my life, which seemed so unbelievably chaotic and so awful, that I understood my Father's love of the book of Job to get you through really bad times. But I think there's a place for us all to understand the conversation can be two ways, and we don't just have to be grateful. We can be mad something happened.
Right. Well, you know, going back to that chapter 3 thing and all of the reasons why we pray, it's a way to unburden ourselves. The Psalms are great at that.
Yes,
you know, and it's funny when you look in the prayer book, sometimes they'll put some verses in parentheses, which means that you might not want to read these publicly. Those are the ones that are always the most interesting. You know, God, smite them! I wish you would smite them. I'm going to go back to this video because if some of you haven't seen it, it's just fun. It's a little bit over a minute, and he references it in the book. So, but next week we're going to do chapters 5 and 6, or no, 6 and 7. Is that what I said? Yeah. And there we go. That's what it says. Yeah. And we'll do that. But here I'm just going to go back to this because it is.
There it is.
Oh, shoot. I don't know why there's no sound. I had share computer sound. Anyway, go and Google Monty Python, Meaning of Life, prayer. Absolutely huge.
What is that?
Forgive us, O Lord, for this, our dreadful congregation and bare-faced. But you are so strong.
So there's also a song about burning in hell that's attached to this too. Anyway, thank you. Next week or next time, it'd be helpful. Just I don't know how well people were hearing outside with people way in the back. So if we could kind of collect up a little closer, that might be better for the folks who are engaging online. I'll go back and listen to this and see how well it was done. But chapters 5 and 6 next time. If you need a book, I've got more.
6 and 7.
6 and 7. This is my life. Spend more time in prayer. Anyway, take care, y'all. Thanks for joining us via Zoom. If you're able to join us in person, that's great. Zoom works. That's great too. See you next time.
Wednesday, we're doing executive director search for Nurse on Meals. We have a meeting at, well, yeah, so many interviews.
Chapter 6 and 7.
We're meeting on Wednesday,